In the midst of the whole Mikal Bridges minutes debacle with Coach Thibs, Stephen A. Smith seems to agree with me that something strange is going on with the New York Knicks. What's up, guys? It's your boy Dariel. Before we get into today's video, I want to remind you guys that around 68% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel. So please, whatever you're doing, hit that subscribe button. Also hit that thumbs up. That way you guys are up to date with the latest news, reports, injury, post-game videos that Chris and I put out. But if you guys want to be up to date with the whole Knicks news, this is the place to be. All right. By now, we know the situation. There was an article put out, I believe, on Tuesday, the day before the Portland Trailblazers game on Wednesday, where Mikal Bridges, there were some quotes from that article talking to Coach Thibs about we don't necessarily need to be playing 48 minutes. We have players on the bench that are actually able to step up to the challenge and actually help relieve some of the pressure off the starting five. But then on Wednesday, prior to the Portland Trailblazers game, this is where things started to get strange. Coach Thibs had a pre-game press conference, and Thibs goes on to say that they never had that conversation in response to Mikal Bridges' quotes from that article published by Stephen Bondi. But since that press conference, it's been revealed that Coach Thibs and Mikal Bridges, they basically pieced it up. There's no bad blood, there's no hard feelings, and we're able to move forward from here. And when Stephen A. was talking about it during his segment with First Take, he brings up the fact that Mikal Bridges is the only one that can bring that comment up with Coach Thibs because he is an Ironman. He is looked at as the Ironman in the NBA. I think this is his 7th season and he has not missed a game. He has not missed a game in his 7th or 8th season in the league, which is absolutely remarkable. Everybody talks about LeBron James and the way he takes care of his body. Mikal Bridges, you might have to start putting Mikal Bridges in that conversation. Maybe it might be for a different point, but he's still in the conversation. But Stephen A. goes on to bring up the point that Mikal Bridges bringing up that point to Coach Thibs, it's 100% valid. If Mikal Bridges was somebody that was injury plagued, he kept missing games, or he was load managing, and he brought that point up to Coach Thibs, then what is this guy bringing this up to me if I was Coach Thibs? But Mikal Bridges is a different breed. He hasn't missed a game in all of his seasons in the NBA. He is the personification of consistency as far as playing. So Coach Thibs has to take that into account. But what's interesting about this whole situation is the way people feel about Coach Thibs and his coaching philosophy. This is something that has not changed. I've been talking about this in numerous videos that Coach Thibs' philosophy, this is what he's been doing since he's been the head coach with the Chicago Bulls. His starting five, back when it was Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, Carlos Boozer, Keith Bogans, Luol Deng, and then moving on to the Minnesota Timberwolves with Cat, with Andrew Wiggins, with Zach LaVine, I still think was on that team, Jeff Teague. Like, he does this all the time. And ever since he's been the coach with the New York Knicks, he rides his players, specifically his starting five. He trusts the starting five. He trusts his veterans, and that's how he's going to be from however long he's going to be the head coach in the NBA. Going back to his rookie coach year, all the way back in 2010, 2011 with the Chicago Bulls, that was the first year he was the coach of the Chicago Bulls. They had a record of 62-20. The following year, 2011, 2012, they had a record of 50-16. Then it was 45-37, and then it was 48-34, and then it was 50-32. And then we reached the 2016-2017 season. This is his first season with the Minnesota Timberwolves. They finished with a record of 31-51. His second year with the Minnesota Timberwolves, they actually made it to the playoffs, and they finished the regular season with a record of 47-35. And in that year, they went up against the Houston Rockets in the first round, where they actually got smacked in the first round. They lost in 5 games, and that was James Harden, I believe, MVP year, where he just went to another level with the foul baiting. That's a conversation for another day. After his last year with Minnesota, which is 2018-2019, he took a break for a year. 2019-2020, he didn't have a coaching job. And then in 2020-2021, he reemerges as the head coach of the New York Knicks. That first year, we ended with a record of 41-31. The following year, 2021-2022, we finished with a record of 37-45. 22-23, we finished with a record of 47-35. 23-24, we finished with a record of 50-32. And that brings us to today's current Knicks team. But what I really want to talk about, I want to talk about Coach Thibs' coaching philosophy and his results and his record. What has that gotten Coach Thibs? How far in the playoffs has that gotten Coach Thibs? Out of all the seasons that I just mentioned, going back to the Chicago Bulls days, going back to the Minnesota Timberwolves days, what's the furthest that he's been to? He's been to the Eastern Conference Finals once, and I believe it was in that 2010-2011 season, which was Derrick Rose MVP year, the youngest MVP in NBA history. They go all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, and do they make it a challenging series? They actually lose in 5 games to the Heatles, LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade. That was their first year together. The Miami Heat, they go on to lose to the Dallas Mavericks in 6 games, I believe. And then that's a whole nother story with LeBron's legacy. But going back and focusing on Coach Thibs, okay, so they make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Everything looks bright. The future looks bright. Derrick Rose is the youngest MVP winner in NBA history. But then you got Derrick Rose blowing out his ACL. And Coach Thibs is relying on Joakim Noah, Carlos Boozer, Keith Bogans, Luol Deng. And one of those years, because Derrick Rose just continually kept having injuries, it was an ACL, and then it was a meniscus tear, and then it was a bunch of other injuries. And one of those years where Derrick Rose was out, Joakim Noah finished third in MVP voting. So if you're going to look at Coach Thibs and his coaching philosophy, like, there's highs and lows. Obviously, the low is running his starting 5 into the ground, playing them 42 minutes on a February 12th game. But a high would be the emergence of some players. I mean, I remember that season where Joakim Noah was the leader of the team, and he was carrying that team, and he was holding down the ship while Derrick Rose was recovering from injury. I mean, finishing in top 3 in MVP voting, I don't think anybody would have thought about that for Joakim Noah in his career. So I can see where some of the positives would come from Coach Thibs and the way he coaches. But then when you take his coaching career in totality, I just finished talking about his only Eastern Conference Finals appearance or Western Conference Finals appearance as the head coach. I should mention that he does have a championship with the Boston Celtics, but he was an assistant coach, and albeit I think he was the head of the defensive side for the Boston Celtics. So I'm not even sure if his title was just assistant coach. He might have just been the head defensive coach, but he has a ring with the Boston Celtics, which enabled him to get the head coaching job with the Chicago Bulls. But now that we got the Eastern Conference Finals series against the Miami Heat out of the way, what are some of his other successes? Besides the Knicks, his only other success was making to the playoffs with the Minnesota Timberwolves in that 2017-2018 season. But if you guys remember, I just finished talking to you guys about how they ended up getting smacked in the first round, losing in 5 games to the Houston Rockets. Now, the excuses that could be brought up, I believe it was James Harden's MVP year. James Harden was another level. That was KAT's first time being in the playoffs. And Jimmy Butler was a part of that team, so Coach Thibs was able to sprinkle some of that Chicago Bulls DNA within the Minnesota Timberwolves organization. But we all know how that ended. Jimmy Butler goes on to have an interview with Rachel Nichols, 5 minutes after a practice. I don't even think the practice was over. I think Jimmy Butler decided to have that interview with Rachel Nichols when the practice was still going on, above their head, above ground. But that's another situation. So I don't know. I have a very complicated relationship with Coach Thibs because me personally, I've always been saying this. I don't think Coach Thibs is going to be the one to bring us to the promised land. I don't think he's going to be the one to actually get us to an NBA Finals appearance. And I also don't think he's going to be the one to get us to win an NBA Finals championship. It's really going to be up to Coach Thibs. After this whole Mikal Bridges debacle with the minutes, now it looks like they pieced it up. It looks like everything is smooth. But this is just the biggest bullseye on Coach Thibs' back, and especially with the New York media. It was plastered all over the New York media, on the New York Times, on the New York Post. It was plastered all over, and I just don't think by this point, I don't think Coach Thibs is going to change the way he coaches. He's used to it. He has some success, even though it's not as much as most people make it out to be. But Coach Thibs at this point, he is who he is, and as Knicks fans, we're going to have to ride with it, and we're also going to be sitting on the edge of our seat, hoping that nothing happens towards the end of the season or even in the playoffs with some players getting injured. But guys, that's it for today's video. I want to say thank you so much for checking it out. Leave it in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about the whole Mikal Bridges and Coach Thibs minutes debacle, where Mikal Bridges put out some quotes, and then prior to the game on Wednesday against the Portland Trail Blazers, Coach Thibs goes to the press conference talking about that they never had that conversation. But at the same time, it looks like they also had a one-on-one meeting before Wednesday's game against the Blazers, and it looks like they pieced it up, and it was very productive. there's just a lot happening right now with the Knicks organization, and especially after this whole Mikal Bridges minutes debacle. I don't know. I'm a little uneasy. I'm a little worried, but that report coming out saying that they pieced it up and it was a very productive meeting, that puts me a little bit more in a calm state. But with 17 games remaining in the season, we're going to see how this goes. Jalen Brunson is going to be out for another, in my opinion, minimum of a week and a half. I don't think he's going to be back next week because that ankle roll was nasty. But leave in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about all this. And of course, you guys know the drill. You know the vibes. It's New York or nowhere. New York forever. Queens get the money. Queens get the money long time, no cash. Even though I'm living in LA, I'm hardly home, but I'm always repping. You know the drill. It's Queens forever. And I'm out. Peace.